The rain hammered against the windshield of the black Mercedes as Dave Asher sat frozen in the driver's seat, staring at the modest apartment building across the street. His hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles had turned white. 15 years. 15 years since he'd seen her face, heard her voice, felt her small hand in his. He was a coward. Even now, even after everything, the therapy, the sobriety, the mountain of money he'd made as if dollars could fill the crater in his chest, he was still a coward. But the letter in his pocket burned against his heart. Stage 3. Aggressive. 6 months, maybe a year if the treatment worked. His daughter deserved to know she existed in his thoughts, that she had always existed there, even when he'd convinced himself otherwise. Dave stepped out into the rain. Welcome to Kindness Arena. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and unseen connections that change lives, please help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter and deserve to be heard by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, comment your thoughts, where you are watching from, and share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated. Your support keeps these powerful, true stories alive. Prisca Asher was grading papers when a knock came. She glanced at the clock, 8:47 p.m., and frowned. Her neighbors knew better than to disturb her on a Tuesday night. She had 23 fifth graders' essays on my hero waiting for her red pen, and she was only halfway through. She opened the door and found a ghost. The man standing in the hallway was older, grayer, weathered by time and something else, guilt, maybe a regret. But she knew his eyes. She had seen them every morning in the mirror for 27 years. "Prisca," he said, and his voice cracked like ice on a thawing lake. She should have slammed the door. She should have screamed, called the police, demanded to know what gave him the right to show up on her doorstep after disappearing for her 12th birthday party and never coming back. Instead, she heard herself say, "You're wet. Come in." They sat across from each other at her small kitchen table, the one she'd found at a garage sale and painted yellow because it reminded her of sunshine. Dave held a mug of tea he hadn't touched. Prisca watched him with the careful neutrality she'd learned from a childhood of disappointment. "I don't want your money," she said finally, breaking the suffocating silence. Dave flinched. "I know. I don't want your apologies either. I know that too." He set down the mug, and his hand trembled. "I'm dying, Prisca. Cancer. I have maybe a year." She waited for the punch of emotion, satisfaction, grief, vindication, something. Nothing came. She felt only the familiar numbness, the shield she'd built brick by brick every birthday he missed. Every Christmas morning, she woke up to her mother's tears. "Why are you here?" she asked. "Because I owe you the truth. Not the version I've told myself for 15 years to help me sleep at night. The real truth." Prisca leaned back in her chair. "I'm listening." Dave's story spilled out like water from a broken dam. He told her about the business deal that fell through the week before her 12th birthday, how he'd lost everything, the house, the cars, his pride, how he'd started drinking to numb the shame, how her mother had begged him to get help, to fight for their family, and he'd chosen the bottle instead. "I couldn't look at you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every time I saw your face, I saw my failure reflected back at me. You were so smart, so full of light, and I was drowning. I told myself you'd be better off without me dragging you down. That wasn't your choice to make," Prisca said, and the anger that finally came was clean and sharp. "I know." Dave's eyes were wet. "I was a coward. I built an empire from nothing these past 15 years, made more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes, convinced myself I was proving something, but every dollar felt like blood money. Every success was hollow because the only person I wanted to share it with, the only person who mattered, I'd thrown away." Prisca stood abruptly and walked to the window. The rain had stopped, leaving the street washed clean and glistening under the streetlights. She could see his Mercedes parked below, absurdly expensive in this neighborhood of beat-up Hondas and practical Toyotas. "I became a teacher," she said to the window. "Did you know that? I didn't know anything about you. I thought it would be easier if I didn't look. I became a teacher because of my 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez. She noticed when I stopped turning in homework, when I started falling asleep in class. She stayed with me after school and let me do my work there because she knew my home was chaotic. She never asked me what was wrong. She just showed up every day, as reliable as sunrise. Prisca turned to face him. I'm good at my job, Dad. I'm really good at it. I'm the person kids like me come to when their worlds are falling apart, and you know what I learned? Dave shook his head, tears streaming down his face. I learned that showing up is a choice. Every single day, it's a choice. You chose to leave, and I chose. Her voice broke, but she pushed through. I chose to stay. For my kids. For myself. For the person I wanted to become despite you. The silence that followed was different. It held weight, substance. Dave wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know something. The day I walked away from you was the day I stopped being human. Everything after that was just going through the motions. I made money, but I never made meaning. I was empty, Prisca. Completely empty. Why now, she asked. Why wait until you're dying? Dave laughed, a bitter sound. Because I'm still a coward. I needed death to give me courage. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn photograph. I've carried this every day. Look, Prisca took the photo. It was her 12th birthday, minutes before he left. She was blowing out candles, and Dave was in the background, watching her with an expression she'd never noticed before, pure, undiluted love mixed with unbearable sadness. I knew that day I was going to leave, he said softly. I'd already decided, but seeing you like that, so happy, so full of hope, I almost stayed. For about 30 seconds, I almost chose differently. But you didn't. No, I didn't. He met her eyes. I don't have a right to ask this, but I'm asking anyway. I have a year, maybe less. Let me know you, not as the daughter I abandoned, but as the woman you became. Let me see what you built from the wreckage I left behind. I won't intrude on your life. I won't make demands. I just want to know that the best thing I ever did, you turn out okay. Prisca sat back down at the table. She thought about Mrs. Rodriguez, about the countless times she'd extended grace to her students when they didn't deserve it, when they'd lied or cheated or given up. She thought about the essay she'd read that afternoon from Mars, whose father was in prison. My hero is anyone who shows up. I need to think, she said finally. This isn't a decision I can make right now. Dave nodded, standing slowly. He looked older than he had an hour ago, diminished. That's more than fair. I'll leave my number. Call me if he stopped. Thank you for letting me in. For listening. That's more than I deserved. At the door, he paused. You look just like your mother. She will be so proud of you. Mom died 3 years ago, Prisca said quietly. Breast cancer. Dave's face crumpled. I didn't know. No, you wouldn't. She opened the door. Goodbye, Dad. For 3 days, Prisca went through the motions. She taught her classes, graded papers, had coffee with her friend Sarah, who asked if she was okay at least a dozen times. She wasn't okay. She was a hurricane trapped in human skin. On the 4th day, she was reading the My Hero essays when she came across Destiny's paper. Destiny was the quietest kid in class, the one who sat in the back and rarely spoke. My hero is my teacher, Miss Asher, the essay began. She doesn't know this, but my dad left when I was little, and sometimes I pretend she's my mom. She always shows up, and she notices when I'm sad, even when I try to hide it. She told me once that we can't control what happens to us, but we can control who we become. I want to be like her when I grow up. I want to show up for people who need me. Prisca's hand shook as she set down the paper. She thought about Marcus's essay. My hero is anyone who shows up. She thought about all the children she'd helped over the years, all the broken pieces she'd tried to mend. She thought about her father's face when she'd told him about her mother's death, the genuine anguish that couldn't be faked. And she thought about the question that had haunted her since he left. Was she strong enough to be the person she preached about being? Dave was in a board meeting when his phone rang. He'd kept it on, volume up for 4 days straight, just in case. When he saw the number, he excused himself and walked into the hallway with shaking hands. Hello. I have conditions, Prisca said without preamble. Dave's heart hammered. Anything. You don't get to disappear again. If we do this, and I'm not saying we are, but if we do, you're all in. No running when it gets hard. No checking out. I swear. You don't get to buy your way into my life. I don't want gifts or money or grand gestures. I want honesty. I want presence. That's it. Yes. And you have to tell me everything. I want to know about the drinking, about why you couldn't fight, about the 15 years. I don't want the sanitized version. I want the truth, even when it hurts. I can do that. There was a long pause. Dave could hear her breathing, could picture her in that yellow kitchen, trying to decide if he was worth the risk. I have coffee every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Just me, a book, and terrible diner coffee at Pete's on 5th Street. You can join me this Sunday if you want. But Dad, her voice hardened. This is your last chance. If you don't show up, or if you show up drunk, or if you make this about your guilt instead of about building something real, I'm done forever. Do you understand? I understand. His voice cracked. Thank you, Prisca. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. You haven't earned it. She hung up. Dave stood in the hallway of his downtown high-rise, surrounded by steel and glass and the trappings of his success, and wept like a child. An executive walking past looked away, embarrassed. Dave didn't care. For the first time in 15 years, he felt something besides emptiness. He felt hope. Sunday morning, Prisca arrived at Pete's at 8:45. She ordered her usual black coffee and a blueberry muffin and opened her book, a mystery she'd been trying to finish for weeks. The words swam on the page. She wasn't really reading. She was watching the door. At 8:52, Dave walked in. He was early. He was sober. He was carrying a small, worn notebook. Is this seat taken? He asked, gesturing to the chair across from her. Prisca looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the fear in his eyes, the hope, the determination. She saw a sick man who had nothing left to lose except the one thing he wanted most. She saw, perhaps for the first time, that he was as terrified as she was. It is now, she said, and gestured for him to sit. Dave ordered coffee, black, no sugar, and they sat in awkward silence for a moment. Then he opened the notebook. I wrote down every birthday I missed, he said. Every Christmas, every first day of school, every milestone. I don't remember them because I wasn't there, so I made them up. I imagine what you might have done, who you might have been. I know it's pathetic, but I want to know the real versions. If you'll tell me. Prisca felt something crack in her chest, a fissure in the wall she'd built. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can either, Dave admitted. But I'd like to try, if you'll let me. She looked at the notebook, at his shaking hands, at the gray in his hair that hadn't been there when he left. She thought about Destiny and Marcus and all the kids who needed someone to show up. She thought about her mother, who'd shown up every day until cancer took her. She thought about the teacher she wanted to be and the daughter she'd become. Tell me about your 13th birthday, Dave said softly. The real version. And slowly, carefully, like a person learning to walk after a long injury, Prisca began to talk. They met every Sunday for the next 11 months. Dave learned that Prisca had almost dropped out of college, that she'd struggled with depression, that she'd been in therapy for years to deal with abandonment issues. He learned that she was funny, wickedly smart, and terrible at cooking. He learned that she sang off-key in the shower and cried at dog food commercials and had a coffee addiction that rivaled his own. Prisca learned that Dave had been sober for 13 years, that he'd started a scholarship fund for children of addicts, that he volunteered at a homeless shelter every Tuesday. She learned that he was terrified of dying, not because of death itself, but because he'd only just started living. She learned that he kept her childhood drawings in a safety deposit box and had never stopped loving her, even when he'd stopped knowing how. They fought. They cried. They laughed. They sat in comfortable silence, reading newspapers and drinking terrible coffee. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Dave gave her a letter. Don't read it until after, he said. His hand shook more now. The cancer was winning. After what? After I'm gone. It's everything I want to say, but can't find the words for. Keep it safe. Prisca tucked the letter into her purse. You're not going anywhere for a while. We both know that's not true. Dave smiled, and it was genuine, unforced. But that's okay. I've had this year. It's more than I deserved. Stop saying that, Prisca said fiercely. You're here now. That's what matters. Dave Asher died on a Tuesday morning in February, with Prisca holding his hand. His last words were, "Thank you for showing up." At the funeral, Prisca stood before a room full of strangers, business associates, employees, people who knew her father as a philanthropist and entrepreneur. She held the letter he'd given her, now creased and worn from being read 100 times. "My father wasn't a good man for most of my life," she began, and saw people shift uncomfortably. "He abandoned me when I was 12. He chose alcohol and cowardice over his family. For 15 years, he was dead to me." She paused, looking at the casket. But something changed. He changed. Or maybe he became the person he was always supposed to be. I don't know. What I do know is that he showed up. For 11 months, every single Sunday, he showed up. He listened to my anger. He answered my questions. He let me know him, the real him, not the polished version. Prisca's voice cracked. "My father taught me that it's never too late to choose differently. That redemption isn't about grand gestures or money or trying to erase the past. It's about showing up every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." She unfolded the letter and began to read. "My dearest Prisca, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I find myself hoping that you'll remember these Sunday mornings kindly. I know I don't have the right to ask for your good memories, but I'm asking anyway. You once asked me if I regretted leaving. The answer is yes, with every fiber of my being, but here's what I've learned. Regret is worthless unless it transforms into action. I can't change the past. I can't give you back the father you deserved, but I could give you the father I became. You saved my life, Prisca. Not in the beginning when I found out I was dying, but in the middle when I realized I was living. Every Sunday was a gift I didn't earn, but treasured anyway. You taught me what grace looks like, what strength looks like, what love looks like. I'm leaving you money because I'm a practical man and your teacher. Use it, don't use it, give it away, I don't care. What I care about is that you know this. You were never the problem. You were always the solution. You were the best thing I ever did. And the fact that you became who you are despite me is the only thing I'm proud of. Keep showing up, my girl. For your kids. For yourself. For the people who need you. You taught me that showing up is everything. It's love in action. It's redemption in progress. I'm sorry for the 15 years I stole from us. I'm grateful for the 11 months you gave me. I'm proud of you beyond words. Always, Dad." Prisca folded the letter and looked at the mourners. "My father was a coward who became brave. A man who ran away and learned to stay. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't even good for most of my life. But he was real. And in the end, he showed up." She placed her hand on the casket. "Goodbye, Dad. Thank you for coming back." 6 months later, Prisca stood in front of her classroom, watching her students file in for the first day of school. A new face caught her eye, a girl with defiant eyes and a too thin frame, radiating anger and hurt. Prisca recognized that look. She'd worn it herself once. "Welcome," she said, smiling at the new girl. "I'm Miss Asher. I'm really glad you're here." The girl shrugged, non-committal, and slumped into a back row desk. Prisca didn't push. She'd learned from the best that some battles were won not by fighting, but by showing up. Every day, reliable as sunrise. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, painting the classroom in gold. Somewhere, Prisca thought, her father was smiling. She'd shown up, and she'd keep showing up forever. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted, and that even a broken path can lead to beautiful places and change of lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Arena, because your support keeps stories like this alive and spreading. Tell us in the comment what you would have done differently. If you're Prisca, would you have accepted him? Or has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life in ways you didn't expect? We'd love to hear your story.